Okay, I think that's... Okay. Yo, yo, yo. Good evening, friends and Donald.
Oh, what's that?
I hope everyone's doing well. Let us know if you can see my screen, hear my microphone, hear the duck properly as well. Of
I
course,
think I
Flary
can.
Roy, the dude, number one. What an MVP, right? Every single live stream, friendly
Yeah,
greeting, and then the audio video check just on lock. I mean, thank you, man. We're very grateful
yeah.
for your
If
role.
there wasn't VIP role like there is on Twitch, you would definitely have it.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, it's Casual Friday. So Duck and I have plenty to get through. Markets and just news, and the world generally is feeling kind of weird.
Hmm.
Like I don't know, the stuff we're used to. I don't really like calling them top signals, so to speak, because I don't know, I don't think it really has predictive power per se. But it's just stuff that you observe at least later in the market cycle is like a good way of clarifying it. I've had a couple friends ask me over the last months and weeks, more weeks. I don't know if that means anything. About investing into crypto specifically. The ones who ask about trading, I just beg them just to forget trading exists, right? But those who ask about investing, I generally say like, forget technical market cycle evaluation, etc. Buying Bitcoin to hold when it gets either really boring that no one writes about, or when it starts being bearish, right? Not like the first time it starts being bearish, but generally like you see negative sentiment or no sentiment at all. That generally is pretty reasonable from a market cycle point of view. It'll land you in the right place. And then the opposite, when you start seeing people who generally don't have an interest in markets, take a not just an interest, but like a really profound interest to the point of gambling a lot, investing a lot, etc. That might be a time to maybe rebalance or lighten up the load. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Of course, before we get too much further, thank you to Bybit for sponsoring Technical Roundup. Their links are available in the description below. If you'd like to support the show, support a sponsor, support us, all that good stuff, go and check them out. And yeah, so that was my kind of entry submission with where we are. What about you, Doug? What's been on your radar? I've got a bunch of like news articles and charts and other topics to talk about. Maybe like a kind of what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean, the entire market, pretty much any market that you're looking at, is completely crazy right now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think many people in this space realize just how crazy it's gotten. I mean, we're like, haha, this is funny. Reddit is squeezing Wall Street and that kind of stuff. But like, when you're just looking away from the market for like an hour and then come back and go at it with like a fresh look, you're like, okay, what is going on? Like, this is
Yeah.
completely nuts. I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like this, be it in the crypto sphere or in the traditional markets, at least not in modern times. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. A lot of the things that I used to use to get away from markets, like even just going on the Reddit front page, which is ironic now, right? Like you'd go and browse through Reddit, or you just talk to some people from other walks of life who kind of aren't market oriented, which is totally cool and refreshing, if anything, given that the amount of time we spend in our circle is really high. I feel like you're right, because no place feels safe when it comes to avoiding like markets discussion and stocks and gamma squeeze and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, if you're looking at Reddit, even if you're like not in your account or whatever, I don't even know if you guys like kind of watch Reddit, but if you do and it just go at it without an account, so it's not even customized to you, 50% like, or at most like roughly like 50% of all kind of Reddit posts are either about markets or any kind of gambling related activities. At least 50% of any kind of ad that you see on social media, or yeah, everywhere you go basically is trading related. So yeah, it's crazy out there.
So there's some macro stuff which is pretty interesting. I want to start with maybe the probably most interesting thing, at least price wise for us. Just bringing it up on the screen here. We've got Elon Musk And as you can see in his kind of bio description page, it says hashtag Bitcoin as the only thing there. We've seen some other people do it. I think the Winkle, I love when people say Winklevi twins. It's just hilarious. I'm not even sure if that's correct, but it's obviously
I think it is.
the Winkle Voss times 2. Mr. Beast and all these other kind of basically high-profile celebrities, etc., putting Bitcoin in their bio. Obviously, Elon is quite different, right? Not least because sort of probably one of the highest profile, but also richest, like straight up richest men in the world. But also, there's a lot of speculation from the conversation he had with Michael Saylor. I feel like that was a few weeks ago. It could be months, time is a construct. They had that discussion being like, Saylor was basically telling Musk how easy it is and how liquid Bitcoin is to convert like a percentage of your company's treasury to Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, I know there's some speculation that it's options expiry that led to this move, and the time at which he changed his bio isn't entirely like ascertainable. It's not like a tweet, right? It doesn't have a timestamp. So there is still some debate as to whether this was the catalyst for the price move. I'm generally inclined to say that it was. I haven't seen any really strong evidence to the contrary. But either way, right, the reason there's that correlation between price moving up and Elon's bio is because it at least opens the door for speculation that, yes, I mean, either way, the richest, highest profile, best entrepreneur, whatever, this really important figure is at least interested in Bitcoin, but it could be far greater than that in terms of, has he bought like hundreds of millions for Tesla's balance sheet, for example? Has he made a personal investment? We don't really know, right? And for me, I'd love to get your thoughts in a second, but it's pretty dangerous with where the market is right now with regard to responding to this news. Because I don't know about you, I was kind of glued to my screen expecting some sort of follow-up during the day, right? Like he changed his bio, and then Tesla announces that their treasury, they've made X purchases for treasury. Or Elon announces that he's personally invested, bought this much. Or they're going to accept crypto payments for XYZ. Something to basically add some flesh or substance to the rumor. Because I can't see this being only positive in the short term if it's simply the case that he puts Bitcoin in his bio and then nothing happens. Because if I were a long holder who basically chased that breakout, I wouldn't feel comfortable unless there's some sort of follow through. So there's clearly a kind of spectrum of actions which could explain this Bitcoin bio, but I think some of them are definitely more bullish than others, right?
Yeah, I mean, how you trade this kind of stuff, right? And it sounds stupid to say as a technical analyst. And I mean, yeah, I can share the screen, but there's it's non-technical, which is you're just looking at his Twitter profile. You put in a notification, and if he doesn't tweet anything about Bitcoin in the current kind of state of the market, I would expect it to go down. And the moment he starts tweeting, and it's anything Bitcoin related, it's gonna just gigamoon, which puts you in a really bad spot as a trader, right? I mean, you kind of have the jump, like we're sitting at the computer. I mean, let's be real, right? We're sitting at the computer anyways the entire day, so you kind of have the advantage. So, for example, for me, I saw him changing his profile pretty much immediately, like a minute after. So I was kind of in the prime position to take advantage of that. I even tweeted it out before the price move had actually happened. And then you just play that, and then you wait till it squeezes, and then it squeezes, and then you just let go. Because I think we're still in, like, at best, a ranging market, right? I don't really see a good case to expect this to just giga moon from here. I could see it chop. But let me actually share the screen.
It's just a very uncomfortable spot for the market to get stuck here. Like this kind of rally on that kind of news, it needs more, right? Because I think, for example, if it were the case that this is like Tesla treasury conversion, even like a nominal amount, I think that'd be a really bullish catalyst, right? But if it's literally nothing, and Elon has changed his bio before, and it, like the Dogecoin CEO, and changed it back, like that had a price material move, but it got fully retraced because it didn't really mean anything, right? Like Bitcoin's obviously a bit more serious. It's like more serious and it's different, but we just don't have any information. Like how significant is this? Because the whole spectrum is it's either a complete meme or Tesla has just bought hundreds of millions of Bitcoin of spot.
Yeah, which I don't think has happened.
And we just don't know, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Tesla's bought. I'm pretty sure he has. I talked about like him buying Doge, like 2 or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. I remember spamming you with it,
Yeah,
and
I
I
just thought
mentioned
you
it
were
a
an
couple of
idiot.
times. Which I mean, my kind of my own fault for not just completely aping in. Like I kind of stuck to my bids at 22, and you can kind of see how that ended up,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
is
we'll do a full post-mortem on Dogecoin. Don't worry.
yeah.
I'll drag you through that.
But yeah, I think I'm pretty sure he bought Dogecoin at least a little bit, which for him, if he's buying a little bit, is quite a bit probably. I would be surprised if he doesn't own Bitcoin. I don't think Tesla owns Bitcoin. I'd be very surprised. I mean, then again, like in the current markets, like in the current kind of with what's going on, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me too much if it actually if he actually made Tesla buy. But then again, like Tesla is a very, very different beast from MicroStrategy. It's just not the same.
Yeah,
so,
MicroStrategy is a Bitcoin hedge fund at this point, essentially,
yeah,
right? I mean,
and MicroStrategy, the reason why that's been working, in my opinion anyway, I'm no expert on this, but the reason why it's worked for them so well is basically because Saylor has all the say. So like price moves and he still has control. Whereas, I mean, yeah, Alan has a lot of control over Tesla, but it's a little bit more complicated in his case than in others. But I think he's probably owning Bitcoin personally. I'd be surprised if like the bigger investment personalities didn't at least own a little bit, including like I could see Schiff owning Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, that seems pretty likely to me.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you have this situation where we had a squeeze based on, okay, Alan is just giga bullish on Bitcoin.
Ellen is like that is the TV show, you know, Ellen the whatever.
Yeah, I'm getting bullied for my German here.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, that's basically how you say it. Yeah, but yeah, the squeeze happened because people expect something from him, and if it's not coming, I could see it chop or go down. But if it does come, right, and I mean we are at 4-hour support, so I mean I don't really see a good reason to short either here. Then we're just gonna giga moon. So it's kind of like you watch his profile. It's like every trader should have it open. Sounds stupid, stupid, but that's kind of how we are or where we are right now. And the reason why it's so important is because whenever you have like stuff like Wall Street bets having an impact on the market, be it who knows if they've really had as much an impact on this entire thing as everyone keeps talking about, right? Maybe this squeeze was supposed to happen anyway. I don't think so, but like who knows, right? But whenever you have that kind of situation going, people are on edge, right? And people are watching social media, and small things can tip the balance damn hard. So it's kind of like, I don't think if Elon Musk changed his profile during this run-up, for example, that would have changed much of the run-up, right? I think that would have been, oh yeah, he's bullish too, nice. But we're all on edge right now based on how the market, or like the in general global market, is moving, where stuff like this actually has a large impact.
I'm just going to straw man your argument and say Donald thinks that the Elon Musk bio was priced in, and in fact his TA told him that Elon Musk was going to change
it's not what I'm saying,
his bio to hashtag Bitcoin. Yeah, it's super interesting. I agree that when we have a case for causation, we tend to kind of overstate it in our heads in terms of how much of a contributing factor it's likely to be, right? That seems pretty reasonable. For me, look, I basically agree. I want to see some sort of follow through, like some material, some sort of material investment or something significant to come from that. Because if you get like how big was that move this morning? It's just like in the space of 1 hourly candle.
20%, basically.
Yeah, if you get like a 20% rally in a market that was looking more or less on the weak side, right? So you get a 20% rally and it ends up being a nothing burger. That sucks, right? Because that's not evidence of like some massive reversal or underlying strength, etc. If you get 20% up and then goes down 20%, I mean, geez, that I'd want to be a long holder unless, I mean, in those circumstances, it's just not great. So yeah, long story short, with the Elon Musk stuff, I think it has an inherent coolness to it, right? Regardless of what the price impact may be, that this is, you know, one of the highest profile innovators, entrepreneurs, CEOs, etc. And this is a very kind of explicit, at least we think, or from what we know, you know, explicit symbol of some sort of alignment. I just don't. I think as more time goes on without some sort of follow through, the market's standards for what the announcement needs to be to remain bullish is going to also go up. You know, so I think at that point, if it's anything other than, like, I don't know, his own massive investment or Tesla doing something with it, I think this will end up getting faded in the absence of, again, some sort of narrative push or continuation. I want to ask you about, because everyone's always making analogies, totally reasonable ones, I guess, given short-term news event in a rough-looking market. The She candle, right? Which is this basically rally in October, November 2019, where in a similar vein, like the market had broken down from a range and it was just looking pretty rough generally. And you had like bearish market structure. In fact, even just before the breakout, you had another breakdown from the range at the time. So the market was just making lower highs and lower lows. It looked really rough. And then this news came out. I don't remember the exact details. I think the general interpretation that the market had, at least in the short term, was that this is really positive for Bitcoin specifically and blockchain adoption in China from like a state level, etc., etc. It was just called like China news or something. And that's it. That's what the market rallied off of. But then it basically turned out to be a nothing burger, right? It was either overstated, mistranslated, people using old clips. I don't know how much you remember that, but it was a bit of a shit show. I think the information flows nowadays are way better than what we had back then. But long story short, you had this big rally, which seemed to be, you know, the basis for a complete reversal. It literally saved the market, which was looking really rough at the time. But then you just had this basically slow bleed, which ended up making lower lows ultimately. And there was no, you know, not only was there no follow through, it's just the understanding of those regulatory changes were incorrect. So when you see that on Twitter, people saying, you know, China pump, or have you thanked, you know, the head of state, that's kind of the context which they're referring to. Do you think those analogies are valid? Does that make sense? Like, could it start to make sense if this just kind of peters out and becomes irrelevant?
I mean, I think in general, how this stuff works when you get news that don't get followed through, like or like hype for news that don't actually come about, is if it doesn't like have any kind of like if Elon basically ignores the topic, right? What usually happens is it undercuts the market, so it goes below where it started to rally from. And if the market is actually strong, it's going to rally from there. And if the market is weak, it's just going to mega dump. So those are, like, in my opinion, the two. That's why I'm expecting it to probably go lower as long as he doesn't say anything on top. Just based on the fact that usually you get he kind of alludes to something, and then you get a lot of people getting long here and kind of overextending themselves.
Yeah, I wonder who that could be.
And then once people notice, oh shit, there's nothing coming now, all of these positions kind of start panicking, right? And then if it starts going back down lower, people actually start to panic really hard, because then, I mean, you just have to look at the daily chart. And then you see this big candle and you're like, oh, okay, this is terrifying. And then you get like a good wick to the downside. And then either that wick gets followed through if the underlying market is weak, or you don't. And then you just wick stop losses and then just go up hard from there. So it's kind of like, I think these kind of situations, they're really dangerous for the market this late in a cycle. Because, yeah, if there's nothing coming, these people are left out to dry. And they probably are not really, like, they're in a position not based on fundamentals, not based on technical analysis. They're in to chase a pump, right?
It's a momentum play,
chase a pump, come again?
It's like a momentum play, which then gets no momentum.
So you're kind of stuck in a moment. Yeah, right. You're stuck in a momentum play without any kind of invalidation. Because, I mean, let's be real. Like, where is your invalidation if you long this? I mean, I'm one of the people. I'm one of the people that bought into this, right? And I struggled with this myself. Like, where you're actually wrong, right? And everyone is going to look at this and it's going to be like, okay, that's where I'm going to be wrong. So, I mean, I could see that get wicked And if the market is strong, it goes up from there. And if the market is weak, it doesn't. But yeah, we'll see. It's a market where you're kind of, if you're trading high leverage, I mean, there's a lot to gain, but more to lose. I don't think it makes much sense. So what you do is you kind of reduce the size, play to kind of still your rules, and try not to kind of just follow the hype, basically. But then again, like if you see anything on Musk's Twitter that alludes to anything Bitcoin related, it's probably gonna moon again. So it's kind of where we are.
It's just
right
such
now.
a tough trade, especially now, right? Because if you caught the impulse, great. At any point almost, if you tagged on to the impulse or woke up after the fact and you longed that news, it's just not been a fun trade. On the other chart side of things, I want to mention two things. One is, well, Bitcoin, and one is ETH, before some more articles and crypto-specific stuff. As for the Bitcoin side of things, the trade that I took yesterday was both the best and the worst trade that I've ever taken. I even didn't have time to tilt in our DMs about it yesterday, but on the rally up, I had a plan to sell that underside of daily market structure, and I put a limit order in just over 34k to sell that level, and my target was the top of the range on that cluster box at, where is that? Also about basically 34 to 33, like level to level play, right? And if you look at it from a like the hourly time frame, how this trade actually played out, and again, this is Casual Friday, so I can vent about things I do which are totally stupid. Like for me, this is just a hilarious moment. I don't think I've ever traded any worse during one of such a great opportunity that was planned in advance, right? It's just one of those things that might be interesting for the audience, right? Or not. Maybe I just need to get it out of my system, but whatever. Both are valid, I think. So there's this daily level at 34. We all know where it comes from, this daily market structure level. So I just decided to put a limit order to sell it, right? Sell that level, and I had a stop initially, a hard stop on this thrust candle here to the left. So market flies in, like pauses just before and sells off. I'm thinking, okay, shit, I won't get a fill. And then the next candle comes in and completely blasts through it, puts in a bit of a wick. Like that's generally fine, right? Because I'm selling a daily level. I'm not going to expect every single hourly candle to respect it perfectly. It just doesn't make sense. It's an area. As long as sellers generally step in, I see more evidence of resistance than I see evidence for support, that'd be fine. Next candle, amazing, right? Closes back below the level with the previous one having closed above it. If you follow any of my YouTube stuff, this is a setup that I actually trade on its own. So when you get a level of resistance and one candle closes above it and the next one closes below it, like that high that's made, it tends to basically stay in. Like close above, close below resistance, or close below, close back above its support. Those are really good reversal setups, right? So next candle closes below. This one closes on top of the level, which is not some sort of bullish reclaim, whatever. And you can see just on the wicks, it's making lower highs, right? Fantastic. Literally everything's going my way. I couldn't make up anything better. And my first trouble area is this level here, right? I'm just kind of in and out very quickly. Risk reward isn't amazing, but I don't really care. It's more the probability that I'm worried about, like the expectancy of the trade not being purely governed by risk reward. But basically, you watch it go in a straight line, and I actually puked literally this hourly wick here. Like, the candle that broke down the level for the first time, that's where I puked, like, manually exited the trade. For no real good fucking reason. I was one of those idiots, despite being the biggest critics, who was watching my daily time frame fade on, like, the M5 time frame. And at the same time, I had Twitter open, and all my feed was like, oh, funding this, so there's like the spot lifting this many fucking offers, TWAP type of bullshit. And I'm getting nervous, right? Because I'm like, it's 4 a.m., why isn't this shit dumped yet? The Asian session should have sold it off. I basically get in my head, and I market sell the wick, and it just goes straight to target in like one candle, right? Fucking amazing. If you look at the 4 hour, it literally looks like a god trade, right? Like fade the level, take profit here, it went even further to the next trouble area, like you couldn't make it up. Instead, I was up there like a dick at 4 a.m. just closing the top. And waking up to see that move was just, it was bittersweet, because obviously the market mooned, so I'm like, oh well, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. But then the trade itself was fantastic, and it just feels, I don't know about you, sometimes it feels really wasteful when you get a really nice high time frame trade, which the market doesn't always offer you, and you just fuck it up, right? Because sometimes I see those opportunities as a privilege a lot of the time. Like, okay, finally I get to trade at like a really nice high time frame structure. And I like to, I see it as like a privilege, honor, whatever, that, okay, it's time to do business. So to fuck it up with something like that, I was just so disappointed, dude.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, at least you didn't lose anything, but you did lose out on potential gains,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which hurts even more. I mean, that's kind of my story with Doge, right? I mean, I've
Tell us
been
about Dogecoin.
crying to you about this for
Yeah,
the
you were
entire
down
day and
bad, dude.
yesterday too. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about
Let's
Doge
do it. Let's
real
do
quick
it.
because people are in the chat kind of saying say Doge, they say Doge. So Doge kind of, Doge had its season in literally a day, basically. I've been always talking about Doge being a range, and it went from range low basically in a day to range high. It's not something we've seen before. It's kind of crazy. Based on, it was bound to go in general. I think the setup was there. But yeah, we had the added confluence of Wall Street bets kind of being hot, and then that wrong or like false. It wasn't really a Wall Street bet account that shielded. It was just like a person that got retweeted by Portnoy. I don't know if you've even heard that story.
It's like a fake it's like a fake Wall
Yeah,
Street bets brand, right?
yeah.
Yeah, pretty
It's
crazy.
like he's basically pretending to be like this kind of spokesperson for Wall Street bets, but he's not really, and he's more in the crypto kind of side of things. And he just tweeted about Doge. I was sleeping at the time, and yeah, you all know the story of me trying to get filled at 15 sats, got front run there, got a little bit at 16, sold that at 23, if I remember correctly. With the plan of rebuying if it does behave bullishly, and then it did, right? And we even in this stream we talked about, like, I think it was like at 30 sats or something, about 22 sats, right?
Technical roundup as well. The second time we put Doge in there, it was that same range, 22
yeah.
cents.
So I was talking about 22. Didn't learn my lesson from the first time, talked about it, put my bits there, got only partially filled, which, sounds always nice, right? You're the wick, blah, blah, blah. But then if you only get filled for 5%, that fucking hurts. And then woke up to this monster candle and been sad ever since. But it is what it is. At least I had some. Yeah, but
What happens now?
it's
What's
tiny.
your read? Does it even matter? You have to wait a year and revisit the chart then?
No, you have to wait 5 years, in my opinion. Like, I think the cycle's done now, basically. I'd be very surprised if we ever went back to 220 sats this cycle.
Nice.
I don't think that's gonna, like, if you bought the top here, I think you're fucked. Kind of my analysis.
Words to live by. If you bought the top, you're fucked. I think that applies to literally every single market right now more than ever.
I could be wrong, right? And this could just go. But this is a range, and this is a cyclic chart, and everyone that has Doge, that has stored it away, and I know a lot of people, including myself, just buy in the low 20, like 10, 20, 30 range, and then just dump on anything that gets close to 100. This time it went all the way to 220, right? But everyone that kind of has some Doge is going to rush to their wallets and just going to try to get out. It could go higher, right? I love Doge, but I wouldn't take it for anything more than this. My target's always been 100, maybe 120. It went to all the way up to 220. And I took the entire ride with my measly 5%, basically, and then woke up to, I think it was 100 when I woke up, because it had already dumped a shitload, and it bounced pretty nicely into 150. And yeah, I wouldn't trade this for more than a range. It's Dogecoin. There's nothing really fundamental going on there.
I don't know, dude. A lot of hedge funds are short Dogecoin, and in the most recent investors shareholder meeting, we came up with some good ideas. Change of leadership, I don't know. I'm pretty bullish.
The thing is, like, when you have this kind of momentum, this could go, right? And I'm not saying, like, I think the top's in for this, but I'm not saying there's no chance it goes back up there, because let's be real, markets are completely crazy right now. Anything could happen, right? But when you have this kind of cyclic or cyclic, cyclic kind of chart, where it's very obvious where support is and it's very obvious where resistance is in this. At least give it some time to kind of go sideways. and then maybe it has another jump. But even then, right, it going from 100 to 200 or to 300, is that like worth getting stuck in it? I'm not entirely sure. For me, Dogecoin is always interesting at down here. But
yeah, I mean, if you're betting on a trend, you're literally betting on the first exception to a multi-year rule, right? Which would be pretty interesting. Could go up, but could also go down. Got it? Yeah, correct.
No, I'm saying I think it's gonna go down. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said I think the top's in, because if I'm saying I think the top's in, that is pretty clear.
Well,
like,
not to everyone, apparently. What I found really crazy is some people, or actually a fair few people, trading it on the USD pair, like the perp, while this was happening. And I would literally measure like a barely visible 15-minute candle, and I'm like, or 5-minute candle, 15-minute candle, whatever. I'm like, oh, that's a 20% swing.
And I mean, they happened on the 1-minute candle, man. It's mad.
Yeah, it was outrageous, and obviously funding got maxed negative. So it was it's one of those environments where you could be very right, but then very wrong. You know, you just get rinsed just because you're trading with leverage or a futures product at those prices. Spreads you could probably drive a train through. It just gets really stupid really quickly. That's why just these instruments, I don't know, as you mentioned, they seem to be better oriented for kind of market cycle spot type of oriented trading, even the BTC pair, rather than seeing Doge pump and jumping into fucking futures trying to gamble on this. Seems pretty tough.
I mean, if you're betting on the trend or like this to develop into a trend, I mean, I love Dogecoin. I think it has more promise. I've said this a million times.
Most altcoins.
Than 99% of the other altcoins. No offense to the other altcoins, but it's just in my head. The thing is, like, all of these kind of recent market moves, right? They're all driven by memes, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
It's just. Like, the big market moves have all been driven by memes. GME in the traditional market, it's a big, big meme, right? I mean, there might be other stuff behind it, but the driving factor of this thing is a meme. Tesla, same thing, right? If you can kind of build a meme for something,
it's momentum, right?
Well.
It's a meme that gains momentum, and that's reflected in price.
And I mean, you even see it in how memes work, right? How viral they go. And now we've kind of combined it to the new meme economy, so to speak, where Dogecoin is one of the best ones in the entire crypto space, right? There's no meme better than the Dogecoin meme in the crypto space. So I'm not surprised that it's getting picked up, because I mean, how could you not love Doge?
I mean, I'll tell you how. This is the funniest fact about Dogecoin, right? Jackson Palmer, who made it in 2000 whatever as a kind of joke shitcoin whatever, the actual founder of Dogecoin, he's the only person I know who actually hates it.
Yeah, and I mean,
like, he's like the only person on the planet who hates Dogecoin is its founder. Talk about
I'm not
prodigal
surprised.
son type of story. I don't even know. It's just kind of a weird stat.
I mean, he's just he always posts whenever Dogecoin goes up, he gets angry.
Yeah, he's like inverse Schiff.
Yeah, with Dogecoin. I mean, I don't think he's holding much of it.
No.
So, I mean, I can kind of get it. And I mean, he's made a couple of coins, right? So he has no kind of right to shit talk any kind of coins for being like not fundamentally valid, whatever, because
whatever that means,
profited
right?
from.
Like...
Yeah, he's profited from it all, so it's kind of like, I don't know, I find it kind of rich. Bitcoin's actually moving quite a bit right now. Holy shit. So this is exactly the area that needs to hold. 34K.
Is that the previous high sort of thing?
Yeah. In general, 34K. Like, how I approach these things in general, when you
Can you move your green box down a little bit so it holds? Would that be okay? just a little
I was
bit
like,
lower.
I was thinking about it for like 2 seconds, and I was like, what? So how these things work, right? When you have this 4-hour support box, whatever, people kind of look at it and they're like, okay, you have to kind of bid this if you think it's going to go up. How it usually goes when you have this strong momentum, you wick through it. And the best kind of entries that you're going to get is actually below and above these kind of boxes, if you get them. The only risk that you're taking, obviously, is that you're just buying into breakdown or selling into breakout. But yeah, in general, like if you're looking for buy off of this mega nuke, 34K is kind of the area to look for it.
Yeah.
If that gives, I don't know, like where you go next, because I mean, to me, this looks already really, really bad. Yeah, just look at a daily candle. We wicked into resistance, wicked all the way back down below the swing low. So if that maintains, you can kind of see where the momentum comes in. And like I said, people are trapped. So, I mean, the daily close is going to be an interesting one, because if it stands like this, I'd be very surprised if we didn't at least start the day out red tomorrow.
Yeah, it doesn't look great, does it?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've developed, I mean, I know people might not take this seriously given how fucking awfully I traded yesterday. But one of the things that has actually helped me a lot was, or has been, to have a simpler kind of entry triggers checklist for a trade. In terms of what does it take for me to actually get involved. Like for the most, a lot of the good ones are limit order entries where I just know. Some of the more discretionary ones, I try to keep it very lean to focus more on execution rather than like ticking 100 boxes before taking a trade. And one of them, and I know you trolled me for this because it sounds hilarious, but one of them is, are the wicks pointing in the right direction, generally speaking, right? It sounds so primitive. But for example, if you're trying to buy support and all the wicks look bearish and they're against you, and it looks like an ask heavy market, like that can be useful information. Like even if you look at the monthly time frame and those wicks that happen or don't happen there, they seem to be like reasonably helpful. I know there's some curve fitting bias and stuff, but like simple stuff like that also I've found to be quite helpful. But to be honest, for everyone looking at actual alpha, the single most useful thing that I've done in the past week or so to help my trading, I found one of my young brother's fidget spinners. Do you remember when that craze was like a huge thing?
Yeah.
Another bubble of the past. It's like Tulips 3.0 or something. Having a fidget spinner at your trading desk instead of like aping into new positions or managing trades that you shouldn't be managing, I've just found to be super calming. That's my useful trading insight for today. Final one I want to talk about in terms of chart. I mean, we'll visit more technical stuff, but I've also got some articles. But on the TA side of things, this is the meme which hurts me the most, is Ethereum all-time high. At this point, no. I mean, generally, like if we set the scene, when a market breaks all-time high, that's bullish, right? The fact that a market even gets to all-time high is bullish as well. At that point, all the quote-unquote supply that's formed an obstacle on the way up has been absorbed. Buyers are more aggressive than sellers, and everyone who's holding the asset is up on their investment, right? There's none of that natural sell pressure to break even, etc., etc. So generally, when you get all-time high, you do get some trickery, just given how crowded the trade or the level tends to be. But for the most part, once it, like, the fact that it gets there means it's not bearish. And then once it gets going, it gets going. I mean, Bitcoin is a kind of quintessential example of that. Is that even a word? Quintessential? Whatever, I'll have to check after the stream. This is like a good example. You had some trickery when it, like, when we were in Discord servers looking for Bitcoin all-time high party, and then it would spike and then go down like 13% and all that type of nonsense. But for the most part, right, once you got like a trending break, and in this case, not even asking for too much, like the first daily close above it, you basically had the full send get going in Bitcoin. So there was like a similar, especially with ETH BTC at yes, it is a word means a classic example of something. Okay, sick. I really shouldn't. I should have more faith in when I use English words. Thank you, chat. Anyway, so basically, having seen Bitcoin take that 2x and ETH BTC looked good and still looks reasonable, right? After a multi-week whatever breakout, the basic idea was there's a similar trade on the table for ETH that's going to break all-time high and go to 2K or whatever it is at that point. But it just hasn't been the case, right? Every time it gets there, usually by different mechanisms, but it just doesn't seem to be doing the trick. If anything, at that point, and this may be good or may be bad, I mean, it's annoying in the short term for sure, but you've actually established a really nice kind of range high resistance level at the all-time high, which isn't something you see very common, right? And I don't mean like a small time resistance level, which where price kind of stopped and then went higher, but I mean these are like really big swings coming from that level so far. So I still think reluctantly, if anything, if this kind of adds weight to that argument, oddly enough, that if you get like a clear all-time high break, daily close, or even 2-day close, or something that really breaks once you get a range breakout, And I find a lot of traders kind of remove their bias, and they're easier to speak to when you talk about the all-time high in terms of a level, less so than the all-time high. It doesn't have any like magical properties per se. Like I still think from a where is the high time frame trending kind of bullish play? I still think ETH all-time high break has some juice when it happens, but the market has been extremely punishing for those who tried to position even a little bit early into that type of trade. And I was on the wrong end of that on this swing. I took a long there, which didn't pay on the alleged or attempted flip of that level, like literally within here. I tried to long it and it didn't work. So I stayed out of this one. I'd rather take a later entry that might actually go up as opposed to buy resistance. So I still think that trade's on the table, but I don't blame people for running out of patience with it, given how unrewarding it's been to chase, you know?
I mean, you're not giving yourself enough credit there, because I mean, for you guys, you haven't seen this, but Cred and we've been kind of having a back and forth yesterday about ETH going up or down. And I said, I don't think it's going to break the high that it's set at 1482. And he said it's going to break from a low time frame range to the upside. Literally went to his target and then started dumping. So yeah, it didn't quite make the high, but it did go up. Now it's kind of, for me, this looks pretty shitty. I mean, I can't really say it any better. I mean, there is support. I mean, there is support here, right? This has to hold. I don't think we should have retested this. This is basically a breakout into full rejection. I've been saying any kind of close back above here on the 4 hour is going to be bullish. Pretty much the same argument that you've kind of brought forth. But yeah, it's not. It's been turned into resistance, right? Which means, I mean, you kind of have to watch the Bitfinex seller, actually. It's impressive. Or like buyer, seller, whoever it is, right? Yeah. The Bitfinex person that is kind of...
Machine guns this thing.
It's insane. I mean, for the people that don't know, there has been... I mean, we can even look at it. Long... How do you... We'll just do it with Bitfinex. ETH longs. So if you look at this, right, you can kind of see the positions on Bitfinex on the long and the short side, right? Now, if you lay this over with the price, this is pretty much one entity, and you can kind of tell. I mean, it's kind of obvious, and the reason how you can tell is that he just basically closed this entire position. So, I mean, if this was multiple entities that were opening into this, it'd be very unlikely that they were just closing it at the same time, right? Just, I mean, you might as well treat it as like one entity, right? So it's one big chat, basically. And if you look back in time on the ETH chart, when was this position kind of established? Basically, in this kind of range in here. This entire range was bought by this guy. Rode it up all the way to basically here. And you might say, okay, this is close too early, whatever, right? But the interesting part is that whenever he's traded ETH, it's actually outperformed Bitcoin. And whenever he's been closing it, it's actually underperformed Bitcoin. So, I mean, this has been really interesting to watch. There's just one guy out there is just absolutely killing it. And yeah, we've seen more long closes on that side. That's kind of why ETH's been underperforming, right? And it's one thing that I've been watching, which I think is kind of good to watch, because you can kind of see how the chattest of chats is playing this market. And he's been closing ETH out in favor of actually Bitcoin, because he's flipped some of this into Bitcoin longs. But yeah, just an interesting fact that I wanted to mention. But chart-wise, yeah, I don't like these fake breakouts. I wouldn't be too bearish as long as we close back above this box or in the box. But if we start losing it, it just kind of looks like we've tried 3 times, right? And are just going to roll over and then go down.
Yeah, you don't like the instant retests either, right?
Come again?
You don't like the immediate retests either.
Yeah. I don't like these kind of rejections. I mean, this is a short time of Okay, I mean, there is buy pressure there if you think about it, right? Because it's not been taking long between these to kind of get back to that price. So I wouldn't immediately say, okay, this is just 100% going down. But I'd be a little bit careful, and I am a little bit careful about this, just based on the fact that, I mean, this is not necessarily how a healthy chart looks like. And it can turn really ugly really fast, but so far it's not lost support. Yeah. So
this, if anything, this recent price action has convinced me that the trade is still above or through all-time high, even if the entry is worse. And I think every time these reactions almost reinforce that, because how many traders are going to want to get long around, like, after or through 1400 or, you know, 1450, 1500, whatever, if their experience the past 3 attempts has been what we're seeing on the charts right now. So yeah, I still have dying faith in the post all-time high trade. I'd be conservative with it, like even if it's a late entry with like a daily close up here or up here, etc. I like, as I've argued previously, like how precise your entry has to be is generally the bigger the move, the less precise the entry, right? So if you're going for a 2x, for example, like 100% gain or even more, whatever, like a large high time frame trending move, whether your entry is like, is it on a retest, is it on the close above, on the breakout of the consolidation, it's like, okay, well, the difference between those is going to be like, I don't know, 2 to 5% or maybe 5% maximum from like the quote-unquote best entry to the not-so-best entry. And like, does that really matter when it comes to that kind of high time frame move you're going for? And I don't think it does, right? Especially even if you're trading a bit higher, like for your breakout buy, whatever, your invalidation is more or less going to be the same, right? That it shouldn't go back below all-time high, and if it does, you just get out best you can. But that would look awful. Can you imagine this? It comes up for a 4th time, it actually breaks it, and then it fakes out. I don't know what I would do. Maybe just liquidate my whole account at that point.
I mean, that would be quite ugly. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that that's gonna happen.
Yeah, like, I would hate for it to happen.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin's close to the daily open. Just as a quick update. I sort of agree that this prior. I mean, for me, in terms of areas, I'm generally happy to have just this whole candle here, if you will, as 4-hour type of support. But really, I mean, look, it's not just support resistance, right? It's the context. You had a really bullish catalyst absolutely send the price, and now we're coming towards the end of the day, and it's almost tagged the daily open, which means a full retrace of that catalyst, right? So, I mean, it all has to be considered in its context. That's generally not what you want to see in... Well, full stop, right?
Yeah, it's a momentum play, and it's not paying out.
That's probably the best way. Yeah, the way you describe it there is really good. It's momentum play, which didn't get momentum. Well, actually, it has a lot of momentum, just in the opposite direction, which isn't fun either. But yeah, it's sort of at support-ish, an area of support as is ETH, but like these full retrace type of things, ETH being below its daily open now, it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah. I want to say something about the momentum kind of thing.
Yeah,
real quick. So I've said, okay, where or what is your invalidation earlier, right? And my invalidation for this was loss of momentum, right? So you're playing a momentum play. You want to see it have momentum, right? The moment it loses momentum and kind of shows you the opposite, you don't really have a really good invalidation for this, right? Like I said, this is a shitty invalidation down here. If you longed this anywhere close to the bottom, you rode it all the way up. If your invalidation is down here, you're getting wrecked.
Just give up 20%, watch it go against you, like, after the very first candle.
And then you know that people have, like, depending on kind of your size, in general, maybe even if you're low size, that everyone has the stop loss down here, right? So it's terrifying, not only on the basis of, okay, you're losing your entire gains, it's also terrifying in the sense that you might get slipped for very much, like a large amount. So what you do is you look at the momentum, and momentum hasn't played out. So you've been invalidated already on this long, on the momentum side of things. Doesn't mean it cannot go up anymore, but the trade idea that you've had has been invalidated.
That's a good
and that's kind of how you have to look at it, because, I mean, if you're trading momentum doesn't show up, you're invalidated. If you're trading a technical setup and the technical setup fails, you've been invalidated. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's the only kind of way you can go about this.
That's a good point.
Without...
especially if you have like a reason for believing or having some sort of time-based framework. So, for example, when that news come out, it's like early UTC, right? It's sort of before Americans woke up, if you will. What time did this start pumping? What time is the hourly candle UTC-wise? Let me see. So, yeah, this is like 8 in the morning, right? 7... hold on, no, this is like 4.
No. It was right after I woke up, which has to be like 9 or 10.
Yeah, for you, yeah. UTC wise, that last close, yeah, it's like 7, 8, basically morning UTC. No, it's middle of the night in the US, right?
Yeah.
You get this news comes out, market pumps, and at that point you're kind of thinking, okay, well, if this is like a really bullish catalyst, or even working backwards, where could I expect follow through? In what session would I expect the infinite bid to switch back on? It'd kind of be the US session, right? That's your sort of step one, easiest place to look for continuation. So if you get this massive rally, and then you have the window where a lot of bullish trading has on the way in this uptrend been done, which is the US session, and the US session wants none of it, it's kind of like, well, do I have to wait for it to full retrace before like taking some off or doing whatever? Or I still very much like your point. That trade momentum trade logic gets invalidated in a full retrace. I'm just saying you could also add some color and context to it. Like, could I get earlier warning signs? And if the US doesn't want to bid this, then are you going to trust Tokyo to do it? It's a tough one. I don't really know. I'm probably going to wait until the daily close and then let that inform how I do things. I just know generally when I get these crazy outlier wicks, I don't tend to trade very well. The move coming like immediately after it. So that might require some more patience on my front, but yeah, we'll have to see. A couple of things. Sorry, go on.
So one thing that this is gonna do, right, is gonna get the PTSD of the bear markets rolling again, because this is exactly the kind of candle that we've had a million times in this bear market, right? Doesn't mean it has to play out the same way, but it's obviously going to get the PTSD rolling where you have massive wicks to the upside. I mean, this doesn't seem to be massive now, looking back at it, but this was quite a big wick to the downside. And then, of course, this one, which was the tether FUD. And then you've had multiple, right? So this wick, it starts wicking to the downside and it just completely nukes afterwards. These kind of wicks have kind of imprinted.
I mean, they're pointing in the wrong direction.
Yeah, they've imprinted themselves into the minds of pretty much anyone that's been trading Bitcoin during the bear market. So this is gonna, like, if you're looking at these, this is even more impressive of a wick, right? This is a massive wick. I mean, on the log chart, you can still see that it's massive, but like in terms of valuation, I mean, this wicked from 38.6 all the way back down to 33. Right, so I mean that's a 5K wick right there.
I'm so glad we sold the top in our Discord server, bro. That was so cool. Thanks so much.
Oh man, you guys wouldn't believe. Like the only kind of I bought some here.
You aped in, dude. You didn't buy some. Come on, like.
Yeah, let's call it some. So I bought some into this news, and then I saw it go up, and I talked with Fred. And we were chatting about like it having gone up and stuff, and we just kind of talked about the trade philosophy that I've had on this trade, right? And while we were talking, I was like, "This is retarded. I shouldn't be in this." So I sold this, and I kind of got a really timely exit. But yeah, this is. Like all this kind of momentum talk that I've been having with you guys, where I'm like, okay, momentum's running out. It's literally just my thought process on this. I saw it wane the moment we take out this high, start dumping on it. That already reminded me, like that already gave me bear market PTSD again. So I just saw the momentum fade, and that's why I kind of pulled the plug on it. But
I mean, it just
now I'm happy about it, but who knows where this
Unless I'm wrong. Again? I think it wicked into the daily open and bounced a little bit.
Really?
Almost touched it. I think it'll still touch it if I'm... I don't think that's it. At least in my experience, if I have these like opens and the market comes really close and then bounces ahead of them, it usually just gets stuffed back into the level, then wicks below, and then you get something. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, that's kind of, in essence, I know if you take the actual bottom of the move, right? If you've high to low, yeah, it hasn't been retraced yet. But if we're talking about this daily rally and it's back to the daily open, and that, for me at least, that's a practical, the move has been retraced sort of thing. So yeah, nothing too great on that yet. I still want to reemphasize what the bullish case would look like, and this is something that we've spoken about for some time. In terms of market structure, which is a tool that we use because it works, I guess, of kind of highs and lows on the daily time frame. And this was the first warning sign, the lower high. And it's not just a hindsight thing. You can go watch my awful, but for some reason popular 2-minute, 1-minute analysis videos, where this is kind of the first evidence, and then the second evidence came in the form of this lower low here. That's when you have bearish market structure. And when that happens, if you want to get bullish, you wait for a higher high after a lower low, right? So when it's bearish, it makes lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, etc. And then if you want that to break after a lower low at some point, right, instead of another lower high as price starts to go up, you actually want to find a higher high. And that's when you know that those bottom shorters at the lower low, they're trapped, as are the participants who tried to sell the lower high, which never came to be, right? So when you get lower low into higher high, then you're like, okay, that's a high time frame trap. And again, we're talking daily time frame, right? Like if you want to push around the market on a really low time frame at during a less liquid session, it takes less money to move, even just like a market order, which isn't massive, can push around price a few ticks, right? That's not too difficult. However, in order to shift daily market structure, you need a lot more money, right? There needs to be a lot more trading done to reorganize the daily chart, so to speak, than there is to reorganize like a lower time frame chart or move price around a little bit. That's why daily market structure works, in my opinion. It's not just kind of OTA on a high time frame. It's to do with what forces, if you will, need to be active in the market, and what are their time frame preferences to mold a chart on a relatively high time frame, right? And that's when you have your kind of deeper pockets, etc., etc. So anyway, that kind of voodoo crap aside, practically speaking, to get that lower low into higher high setup, it would basically be this candle here, using this swing entirely as the most recent lower high, which acts as amazing resistance right now. You actually sent me this chart, Don. You sent me this box as resistance when I was in disbelief, so whatever. But basically, the bullish setup would obviously be if price reaches towards high time frame support, sure, but on the upside, on the reclaim type of scenario, it would be a higher high through basically this 38k region. And at that point, I think the world's your oyster, because the all-time high isn't really resistance when you get those types of setups, and then we can very much enter another kind of price discovery trending leg. That's where I think the high probability bullish trade is. But ETH is, again, in a similar vein. The all-time high break is where I think the high probability bullish trade is. For Bitcoin, it's here, but not with the market how it looks right now, from a daily technical point of view, at least. Edwin Sandy says, you really think that there is a bullish setup after this move? There's always a bullish setup after a move. The question is, how far is price from reaching it? And in this case, that would be kind of a tall order with how the market looks right now, because kind of have to retrace the retrace and close above like 39k or whatever. So look, I think it's always worth bearing in mind, even if you're bullish, like what would a bearish move look like? Or if you're bearish, what would a bullish move look like? Because that can keep you on your toes and get you to manage the trade better. Even if you don't think it's likely, I think it's having those scenarios in the back of your mind for invalidation is super useful. So SK says the newsletter this week was real good with explanation. Thank you. That's super kind. We try.
Yeah, I think in general, like I said at the beginning of the stream, it's kind of crazy to think about like that was $2,000 ago, basically. I mean, like, was it 2,000? It has to be, right? Roughly. 1.5, whatever. But what I said in the beginning of the stream, right? You either roll over everyone that's been trying to make the momentum play by wicking them out, or you actually get Elon Musk to actually tweet something bullish about Bitcoin. I think that's like the two bullish scenarios. I mean, it could make a higher low here and go up, right? But that wouldn't necessarily be a good setup for me, because I really, really don't like putting my stop loss down here, betting on a higher low here, when I know exactly where every kind of momentum trader has their stop. Because, I mean, this is really, really obvious that you have a bunch of stops down here for kind of the very, very... for the bulls with very, very high conviction, right? Because, I mean, if you've not abandoned ship, I mean, where are you going to abandon ship? And it's going to be below here. So even if this goes up from here, which it could, right? I mean, it's daily open. It's a nice support level. If you cannot place your kind of invalidation at a good place, is it really worth, like, how can you calculate your risk? And the answer is, like, if you're getting in and you put your invalidation down here, I mean, you have to add a bunch of more risk, assuming you get wicked out of your trade.
Sure.
And then you also have to kind of assume that you're not going to get the time to manually close, because it's just going to, if it goes anywhere close to there, it's just going to wick to the downside immediately. So that's a difficult kind of trade to take. It's not necessarily the wrong trade, and this is something that I always kind of struggle with when people kind of ask me for, okay, is this a good trade or not? Because I mean, risk reward wise, and I mean in general, are we at support? Yes. Can you actually use that well? I'm not entirely sure. Like, I couldn't, just based on the fact that I would get wicked out massively here, so it wouldn't be worth it for me. But it doesn't have to be a bad trade because of it, right? It's just not for me.
I just think there's a straightforward trade. Like, look at the size of the daily candle. I feel like the bulk of the rotations have kind of taken place, and this is kind of the you know, all the meat is gone. Is just bones at this point. And if you're scrapping for them, I mean, if you have an edge, fantastic. You know, be my guest. Trade the, I think what's left of the daily range, and maybe coming into the Asian session, etc. But this is, I don't have anything here of value to offer from a short term trading perspective. When 20%, you know, massive run on the daily, retraced back to daily open, and it's kind of just there now. So that's that. Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward on Bitcoin, ETH, and all that other stuff. Of course, you'll have, not that we're necessarily, I want to talk about a few more things, but just in terms of the content side of things, my live stream is on Monday, so like the video, subscribe, etc. The Duck Wednesday, and the newsletter comes out on Tuesday as well. So there'll be plenty after the weekend to keep us going. And of course, Elon Musk can tweet at any time, so who really knows. Daniel says, also, yeah, if you have any questions, we'll also happily answer them. Daniel says, how important are the different trading sessions, Asia, Europe, USA? They have been pretty important up until a couple of weeks ago. I think they've been less important recently, I would say. And that's because the predictability to some extent has gone down. Now, whether that's some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy or not, I don't think really matters. But the basic idea for the bulk of the easy mode training, if you will, was buy USA, sell Asia, rebuy USA, right? I mean, some model of that was very functional for trading this market. So, especially because the narrative kind of aligned with that as well. It wasn't just coincidence, right? You had a big institutional US-focused spot bid in the market, which was doing its business during the US hours, right? So that's when you had the TWAP, VWAP memes, etc. So it just made sense, right? The session times aligned with what we were seeing in the books, in price, etc. That kind of faded as we started to chop. I think the most recent time zone meme has been obviously the sell-offs during the Asian session or after midnight UTC. That was a thing which worked really well for a short window and then less so afterwards. So I'll say two things. First is, generally as a trader, even in the 24/7 market, you should have an awareness, I think, of trading sessions. Because it just seems pretty obvious. Like, it's like just a big part of how markets operate. And it'll help you catch on to these narratives and make sense of them in a timely fashion. But also, as we saw with the US bid and the Asian sell-off, etc., even if it doesn't last forever, if you find that short time period of relative alpha, edge, whatever, that's time session based, you can make a lot of good trades using that logic, even if it is in a short window, right? Like, I bet if Salsa were here, he would say those kind of short-term edges, you need to completely milk the shit out of them until they stop working, and then you wait for the next one, right? I think a lot of the times session times are really good for those, especially lower time frame or session-specific edges. So having an understanding is pretty important. So I'd say, yeah. There's a long answer to a short question. But how important are the different trading sessions? Very would be my version.
I mean, in general, what I think, if you're trading, right, what you have to become good at is basically spotting anomalies in the chart or in general in the trading behavior of the market that you're trading, right? So be that, okay, this is going up during that session and going down during that session, or be it, okay, if Coinbase goes up 200 above index, then this and this happens. Be it, okay, funding works really well. So if you have high funding, longs typically get squeezed. That kind of stuff doesn't work forever, right? But while it works, or if you spot it early before everyone keeps talking about it, that's kind of the money. Like, that's where you make the money on the short time frame kind of side, right? That's where the edge on the short time frames is. If you're looking for the edge on the longer time frames, I mean, you can easily use anything from market structure to, okay, this is trending, generally speaking, like this is trending upwards or this is trending downwards. Like, you can keep it more simple, but then again, you'll have less trades and less opportunities.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, if you want to be that low time frame or even mid time frame kind of guy, that's trading constantly, you have to watch out for these kind of things. And it doesn't have to be like, just because I've mentioned the few things that I've mentioned doesn't mean that's the end to it all, right? There's things that you can spot that I'm never gonna think about,
Yeah.
and those are probably gonna work better on, like, they're gonna probably work better than what I've said before, just based on the fact that only a few people can kind of see those anomalies, and then they're not exploited yet. And at some point, they're going to stop working. And the moment they stop working, you put them away. You kind of keep remembering them. Think about, okay, this has happened like this, and this is how it worked. So you know when it does show up again. But you have to kind of let it go at some point if it stops working. Because something that I've seen a lot of traders do in my time trading is they find an edge, they milk it, they make a shitload of money, and then they can't let go. Because, I mean, that's the edge that they've developed. They're like, okay, this is how it has to work. And then they cannot let it go, and then just stick to it way beyond where it stops working. And then
where it stops being an edge, right? It's like,
yeah. And then they just give it back, right? So that's kind of like the one thing I think, in general, as a trader, you kind of have to have a good eye for the market that you're trading, and think about other ways, not necessarily like everything that gets parroted on the internet or on crypto Twitter. I mean, that works for a while most of the time, like the Asian session, American session, that worked for a good while, even though it was known, right? But it worked for a long time before you saw it ever on Twitter, right? And if you can kind of build like a social network with people that are willing to share those kind of low time frame edges, be it because, okay, they're not trading that massive size, so they cannot really properly take advantage of it. So there's more than enough of that edge to be shared with others, or be it just because you're just going to give them back something at some point that's very valuable to have. So yeah, it's not only linear thinking of, okay, market go up, market go down. You kind of have to look for stuff that you can actually abuse.
Well said. I think still, after years of doing this, some of my most productive sessions have literally happened in the last like 6 to 8 weeks as a product of screen time and making observations, writing shit down, trading it, even if it is with small size, just to kind of see how it feels. There's no limit to these things, and as you say, they're all very dynamic and they change. So even if you've got something, doesn't mean there's something. It doesn't mean it's going to stick around, and also doesn't mean it's the only thing. Maybe there's something clearer, etc., etc. So generally, and I don't know how much crypto YouTube you guys and girls watch, if any, but if you ever come across the type of language which seems to insinuate like, oh, just set and forget, or one thing you need to know, or just leave your orders in and trade for 15 minutes a day, etc., etc. For the overwhelming majority of cases, it's just utter bullshit. Forget it. It's not true. It won't be helpful, and if anything, it'll probably be the opposite. It'll probably harm your development as a trader if you almost approach it with this arrogance of like, I know this one thing. I only need this one thing. The market is just this static thing that I can enter here, get out here, and put a stop loss here, and that's all that matters, right? It's just, I don't know, screen time is completely irreplaceable, and even after years, and I expect to do this for many more years as well, like some of my most productive sessions come from really focused screen time. So you can't replace that with a course, you can't replace that with a PDF, you can't replace, unfortunately, that with technical roundup either. We can only seek to, point stuff out that's pretty interesting to us. But yeah, a bit ranty on that side. Some people are asking about alt BTC pairs. Do you have any interesting, any that are immediately on your radar? I haven't actually looked.
I haven't
recently.
actually looked at
So apart from
many
Doge,
either.
I can't. I mean, Link retested structure, not much there. I think BTC pairs are going to be pretty. It's a weird spot for a lot of BTC pairs, right? Because the DeFi stuff has just kind of kept going, which is incredible in many cases, and the strongly trending altcoins haven't really been reliant on their BTC pairs or on their ETH pairs. Now, it's still been useful in terms of, like, for example, finding relative levels of resistance when the USD pair doesn't have any resistance. So that's been cool, and stole that from Duck straight up. But generally, because the best performing altcoins, primarily in DeFi, have been in secular uptrends, so not dependent on Bitcoin looking one way, ETH looking another way, etc. For a lot of these, the BTC pair has been slightly less important, but obviously still important from a kind of portfolio point of view. The main one I'd say is ETH BTC, and generally it still looks okay. It broke above the multi-week range at kind of a weird time. I don't know about you, Duck, but my expectation was we'd see that high time frame breakout when ETH USD would break all-time high. That was kind of the setup that I was looking for. The ETH USD breaks all-time high. It gets absolutely sent, and as a result, because it has that space that Bitcoin is kind of filled out, if you will, we get further outperformance in the ETH BTC pair as a result of also this multi-year breakout. So at the moment you had the really strong close above. It's come back and already retested the level itself. Now whether that's bullish or bearish, I mean, look, some traders really don't like the instant retests. I think it's context dependent, but generally what tends to be agreed upon is that the breakout shouldn't fail if it's bullish, which sounds really self-explanatory and simple, but that's because it is. So even taking this weekly thrust candle, for example, right, that really shouldn't get retraced. Or if you want to just take this box, any closes below it almost certainly would be a bad look. Probably not just for ETH, but for the market as a whole at that point. I mean, I could still see a case where maybe Elon does tweet something and Bitcoin pentamoons and ETH just gets stuck in Goblin Land. But that would just be weird. That would just be weird. For those asking about BTC pairs, point number one is the best performing altcoins haven't been reliant on a certain correlation or relationship with BTC pairs. Doesn't mean they're not important, but still, worth bearing in mind. Point number two, most important one, probably ETH BTC. Still looks fine, but any weekly closes below this macro breakout, that would probably be the top for ETH for some time, I'd imagine. I don't know what your thoughts are.
My thoughts on ETH BTC are very similar, actually. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this weekly range. It's kind of funny that it started breaking up because my line actually ran out of space. Stopped. But for me, it's the same kind of thing. Shouldn't go back into the old 18-19 range. What I can say about this is I've seen this before where it closes back below and then goes back up. And that happens, and that's fine to get stopped out on, in my opinion. Because one thing, like if this does go back down and then go back up, you can just re-long. You have an invalidation down here. Sometimes the market just wants to get you. In this case, there's no way around it. So if this kind of turns bearish and then turns bullish straight back after, I mean, that's just how markets work. Sometimes they don't give you the free ride and you just have to actually work for it. For me, this is bullish as long as it's above. I mean, we've been talking about this in the newsletter for a long time where our kind of bullish bias flip level has been this. This is an older chart. I use another one. But this kind of level, the 0.031-ish level, has been our bias point. So anything above there has been, I mean, we've just assumed it's going to be bullish. And it has been. But it's not a strong breakout, to say it in the nicest way possible. I don't like these retests. I hate when you get breakouts and immediate retests. Sometimes they work. Like, I mean, if this just turns into wick and we just get the candle green, that would make me much more happy about how this is playing out. Sometimes they go back into the range and then actually break out after having stopped out most people. That would work too. I mean, it's just, okay, you just got stopped out. That's how it is. But in general, if it does fail back in the range, more often than not, it's just going to go down. So this is the new invalidation. Above, it's bullish. Below, it's bearish. And if it does fall below and it gets bearish and then actually gets reclaimed, that's even a better bullish setup than it is right now, in my opinion. So that's kind of like the three things to watch out for.
Or if you just don't want to pay any attention to ETH BTC, you know that the Bitcoin levels are reasonably clear, but the bullish ETH level is also super clear in terms of the all-time high. So you can kind of say, look, ETH BTC, it might be a chop, might come back and stop me out, whatever, but I'm going to pay attention to, like, the place where I do want to get bullish with conviction is the all-time high, range high break, whatever, through 1,420, 1,450, 1,500, whatever. That's where I want to do business. I think that's also a reasonable view. I'm going to talk about my meme box because I feel morally obliged to. So the reason one of the many reasons that Donald and I don't get along is because I find support in areas which he thinks are kind of frankly insulting. So for me, for example, I see this as weekly support on ETH. Now, is it the best level in the world? No, absolutely not. It's utter trash, right? There's nothing here.
It's illness is what it is.
It doesn't have any historical kind of weight, etc. But sometimes when you look at high time frames, you kind of have to settle for what you've got, right? And in this case, you had an impulse, you had a bit of a 1 week range, and another impulse. And at the moment, right? And I've scalped this over the last couple of days, so if I can see there's buying taking place at that level, right? I've got this as support. So I think to get swing bullish ETH, you generally want to see the all-time high break, and you get your kind of late but much more comfortable continuation through there. For the bearish ETH trade, I would need this to fail. So the lower boundary of that, any even probably daily loss through there, anything that really looks shitty, that's not a wick through this lower boundary, it probably goes down a fair bit. Because the only real level I would have, if that weekly bearish case plays out, I think at a bare minimum, I know we have that weekly structure, whatever, but I honestly think if it fails there, you kind of have to start contemplating a retrace of basically the last leg up. So the origin of the move closer to 750, 760, etc. So kind of high time frame ETH for me is reasonably straightforward, although not always comfortable, which is that the bullish trade is through all-time high, and do you get a great entry? Not guaranteed, but I want to have the probability on my side. For a high time frame bearish trade, this weekly box that the duck hates looks like this on the intraday timeframes, and it's also conveniently where existing market structure is being kept up. It's kind of where these higher lows are coming in. So if that were to fail on any kind of high time frame basis, I think that's when you get your unwind. I mean, you've got some trouble areas on the monthly, etc. But even here, you can see we've tested this a few times, and if a high time frame breakdown does come in a similar vein to just the full retrace we drew on the daily, it all seems to land at around 740. That's where I think this is just a tough environment to trade. Easier bullish trade for me is through here, even if the entry isn't perfect. Higher probability bearish trade on a weekly/daily basis is a break in market structure, which I think through 1,200 would be there, and this is more of your pain in the ass range type of deal. But for me, this is where the swing's set up, and it's been a while, so I think keeping some perspective
I like it a lot.
Is important.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's actually, I probably like it more than I mean, kind of like it the same as my idea, which is high praise.
High praise, yeah.
This is actually interesting on the 4 hour right now, where we're held the support. So could see some bounce.
Send it to all-time high right now.
Come again?
Send it to all-time high right now. I need the redemption arc after all the shit talking yesterday.
I mean, I don't have a short position, so go for it. But yeah, I want to see this hold. Shouldn't close back below it, like I said earlier. And then, yeah, if it does start losing support, I think the area that you pointed out is pretty good one, because this one is quite far away. The one that I've marked out, which is 1.1k. Target would be the same. Like if we lose 1.1k, I think it just goes down to 700-ish, which sounds a lot, but given the fact that we've rallied from $80 to 1.4k, I mean, nothing's impossible, right? So if it does start failing on the technical side of things, it just makes sense to kind of look for the next support. And there's really none other than in that area anyway, other than the 700 to 900 area, which still gives you a lot of room to go. But first, before getting any kind of bearish ideas, in my opinion, would have to be if this level gives. And then maybe you get a nice entry on a retest, maybe not. In general, if it does start closing below, I'd I'd be bearish oriented, and if it does keep closing above, I could see this just go straight back up. But
the fourth test of all-time high.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to fake that. Like, I mean, looking at the daily, right? This kind of stuff. And I've sent you this yesterday. I mean, we had like a massive wick to the upside in between, but we are at resistance, right? We closed straight back into resistance. So the kind of area to, in general, watch, I think, which kind of aligns a little bit with what you've had on the lower time frames, is this is resistance. If we start closing above there, I think the all-time high is not going to be too much of a resistance anymore, just based on the fact how often we've tested it. And this support. And if that gives, I think, you don't really have any significant support until like 1K.
Yeah.
But given that's already been tested with like a massive impulse candle, I wouldn't want to be the guy that is just looking for longs there. I'd much rather look for at least a shakeout below that box for an eventual reclaim afterwards. That would be the easier kind of trade for me. But yeah, I'm looking at this resistance, looking at this support on the ETH/USD side, and then ETH BTC. Someone has said, yeah, what would ETH BTC have to do to make you bullish? And I mean, we've kind of been bullish on this since it's reclaimed 0.031. So it's more a question of what would make you bearish on this. And like we said earlier, a loss of that weekly support would do the trick. Yeah. And someone in the chat, I forgot the name, said something which is very true, that this kind of the same level here that we're trading right now got completely worked in 2017. So you can kind of see it's a level, tested as support, broke down, and then this is what you talk, like this is what I've been talking about, that just sometimes happens. You get a shakeout below, that's going to stop you out, and then you get a strong reclaim, and that's just something that you have to get back into. And it's just how trading works sometimes. There's no reason. If you're getting into a long, I mean, I think the good long is always the first test of a level or a second test. Like this 2 tests, that's fine. The third test is not something that I generally long, so this wouldn't have necessarily, and I didn't back then even. This isn't something that would catch me, but even if it did, right, you get stopped out and you just have to get back in once the momentum kind of comes back in on the other side. Just how trading works. But in general, when you get like a level that gets tested multiple times, I mean, a good level gets tested once, totally fine to get a position in. Gets tested twice, completely fine to get a position in. 3 times and it starts getting dangerous. And I think it's the same kind of thing that we have on ETH/USD, right? So the third time, I mean, I don't have the balls to short this.
Yeah,
it worked out, but I wouldn't have. Like, this is not something that I'm too interested in. But like the 4th test and the 5th test, this is something that I definitely just don't touch. Supports and resistances only hold for so long, and sometimes they hold for 8, 9, 10 times, right? But there is a limit to how often I trust it, and are willing, like how often I'm willing to take a trade off of a level before I'm just like, okay, this is too much. Because at that point, everyone is trading off of the same level. And if it gets smoked, you're one of everyone. And that is usually just not a good idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I agree. I just want something straightforward at the all-time high, right? Like Bitcoin's all-time high price action was really straightforward. And I just think there was a lot of disbelief when it did happen, which is why the doubling of price was almost so casual. So seeing something else, something similar for ETH would be cool. People are asking for a Bitcoin summary, which is tough, but I mean, the answer for me, to be completely honest, is I don't know. Like right now, because the simple fact is, you had bearish market structure. You had a 20% move up, which retraced all the way back to the daily open and is bouncing now. But I think overall, you had a momentum move which largely didn't play out, right? Or at least this isn't what it's supposed to look like if you get much more straightforward continuation. As a result, I'll probably stick by my guns from a. I mean, look, if this falls back into some of my low time frame levels and I can punt those on a level to level basis, like within the old range, basically. Oops, I just completely ruined my chart. Where'd you go? Yeah, if it wants to come back within the old range, which is more or less here, right? The upper boundary at 33 to 34k as resistance, support closer to around 30k. If it wants to come back and trade here, or even at the extremes for support resistance, that's fine with me. I'll happily trade those. But I feel like at least right now, at the time of making this video, summary, whatever, it's probably going to be a bit tough, because of how this thing is set up during the course of the day. You had a huge momentum chase, and then it got completely stuffed. So now what, right? And the answer is, I don't know. If you're watching this in the future or for a higher time frame point of view, as before, market structure still needs fixing. Tall wick or not, big candle or not. I think generally a daily close which looks like this isn't great, but it doesn't mean it can't repump and fill in some of it before deciding direction, right? So one method of trading that I absolutely hate is when you get, for example, if this is like a level of resistance, if it were, I mean, it kind of is if we take the swing high, you've got resistance, and then you get the price closing a lot below it, and then so as a result, you have participants saying, okay, well, that's resistance, it closed all the way below, so I'm going to sell the candle close because it closed below resistance. Those trades tend to be terrible, right? And that's why I try to trade. I try not to trade if I'm away from structure, because for all you know, even if your resistance is correct, the next day starts retracing against you, and goes up 10% before going down, back to target, whatever. So these types of tall wick candle closes, I don't think. I know it's tempting to act on them like on the close of the candle. I just think it's a shit idea generally, and it leads to some pretty awful trades, both in terms of structure but also risk reward. So people asking for a Bitcoin summary, the long story short is this hasn't really changed much because it didn't close meaningfully above or below anything yet. For the big bullish case, still, I think getting back above 38, 39 is where I'd get like really bullish, like new all-time highs significantly type of bullish. Anything else is likely chop, if not bearish, between the 3400 breakout level and the bottom of the range, closer to 31k or thereabouts. That's sort of my view. Like tomorrow, for example, I could see a lot of this wick get retraced, but that wouldn't mean that anything has really changed in the market per se. So I kind of need to wait and see. But at least on the daily time frame, I need more evidence for this rally to actually change something. As a result, I think one level at a time is a pretty cool framework to employ. Or just no level at a time, because fucking look at this. It's, I mean, the chances that you're gonna outtrade, everyone and be profitable in these conditions, maybe not hugely high. And the great part is, the final point is, this could all go out the window if this Elon Musk thing develops further or some other fundamental catalyst kicks in with all this volatility. So that's why weak opinions loosely held is kind of my view with Bitcoin right now.
Yeah,
awful
I think
summary.
In general,
probably my worst yet, but I think that's kind of reflective of the conditions,
No, I like it. I think in general we're in this weird situation where, I mean, for some reason, and I mean, I'm not complaining about it. We've had a lot of people with a lot of money move into the space, right? So you can make the prettiest levels, everything work. And then someone like Elon Musk comes in and then just buys like 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million. I mean, there's no real upper cap on this, right? And it just doesn't do what you think it's going to do, right? Or one of these guys that bought big just sells at a level. And they're not really traders per se. Like we've been in the last few years, 17, 18, 19, at least after the bubble has popped back then, we've been in a trader-led market, right? Where you have clear levels, you have clear trends. Yeah, it chops a lot, but in general, the market respects kind of the TA that you would expect it to do. Nowadays, you have it a little bit different. We're in a little bit of a different kind of market state where you have big money come in. And that can change things, right? So, for example, for me, looking at 30K, right? I was looking at this breakdown. We had this red candle. and I was looking at the price action during that day and the next one. And for me, technically, based on my experience, this should have broken down, right? But then I was looking at it and I just saw these bids come in. Coinbase did the same thing again, where you just had Coinbase just buy up pretty much everything that was on offer for like $200 above pretty much any kind of other exchange. And that thing obviously changes things, right? That kind of set the bottom on that. So we've had that. I think it came in here or here. I don't remember, one of these two. So as pretty as you can make these levels, you have to be nimble on your feet. If you see something out of the ordinary, you see Coinbase or you see any kind of other spot platform, just massively buy or massively sell. Something that you have to respond to, right? And then it's not as much about levels anymore as it is about kind of interpreting those things that are happening, right? And that's obviously difficult for people that have not done it before. That's why you kind of have to learn in that regard.
It's a good time to learn as well.
Yeah, to kind of spot stuff that you typically don't really pay attention to, because like I said, in the last 2 years, that hasn't been as important as it is now.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
I mean, look, that's the whole point of being a discretionary trader, right? Even if you've got like a nice TA framework, that's just supposed to give you context on the market. That's all it is. It's context. It's a piece of evidence. It's a part of the puzzle. It's not an end in itself. Like, for example, if you have infinite bid, by which we mean a huge buyer in the spot market, and all your bullish setups are playing out, all the bearish setups just aren't getting any traction, like the market almost looks like it's at cliff edge and it always gets rescued, etc., etc. That's sort of what we mean by infinite bid. Just like an overwhelmingly powerful, aggressive, to be slightly more technical, force in the spot market just keeps buying dips. So setups that would normally have like X rotation size to the downside or bearish targets, etc., none of them keep getting hit because whatever looks like a dip just gets absorbed, right? And also, on the point of kind of not being sure and interpreting news and being nimble with context, we've been going on for like an hour and a half, so I'm not going to spend too long, just as a kind of summary thing. Some of the headlines I have, just to give you an example. First one. Kraken, Coinbase suffer outages amid market volatility, right? Usual stuff. Exchanges just fucking collapsed as usual. This is like a topic we should probably make a whole video on. It's really embarrassing how poor the standards are for just server architecture and just uptime, downtime, maintenance. They've had years and billions in profits to actually build something that works. And the second you get volatility in crypto, everything fucking falls apart, right? You can't buy, you can't sell, you can't convert anything. It's dog shit. But this is something to keep in mind, right? Then you also have, this is scary to me personally, the top apps in the Apple Store. And this, I don't know how up to date this is. I could even try to refresh it now. But broadly, I know it's reflective of the truth, which is that the top apps now, for the most part, are all just investing, trading, whatever apps. Robinhood, Webull, Coinbase, Fidelity. I mean, you know, Binance almost cracking the top 10. If you go a bit lower, you've got Binance US, Voyager. I mean, this is crazy, right? This is the whole world coming to speculation. And this isn't stuff that tends to happen mid-cycle for the most part. This is late cycle type of stuff. Froth, as some people like to call it. Now, is it enough for you to just see, oh my god, Robinhood is #1 app, I'm going to short? Absolutely not. That type of framework is not very wise. But again, it's pieces of the puzzle that provide you with context when interpreting TA, even if you are just a pure technical trader, right? Like, I don't know about you, Doug. This to me is fucking crazy.
It is, yeah.
Just a quick one. For those of you who aren't huge fans of us covering like traditional altcoins, so to speak, this is a really good example. I think on crypto Twitter, you're exposed to a really weird basket of altcoin traders who are like literally months and years potentially ahead of the curve. The reason we look at a lot of older altcoins is because that's where a lot of people, that's the only thing a lot of newer participants know as altcoins, right? So I've literally brought up the Robinhood website here into cryptocurrencies. I don't know if the list is loaded for you yet, Doug, but look at this stuff. Bitcoin SV, OMG, Lisk, Dash, Monero, Neo, Stellar, ETC, Qtum, dude, fucking Qtum, Dogecoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin. I mean, look, this is literally like 20 2017 pretty much, right? This is 2017 gold standard. So for those wondering why we still give time to older alt Bitcoin pairs, it's because they still matter. Like they might be make for terrible trades and investments, which is not something we'd necessarily dispute, but the fact that people hold them and they're relevant and they're still the kind of medium of exposure that a lot of people are going to get to altcoins, it's still worth monitoring those flows to kind of see what's up, you know?
I mean, in general, I don't. The good thing is I'm never going to have to make that case again, because I can just say, look at Dogecoin.
Dogecoin,
like people have been shitting on me for talking about Dogecoin for years now. Like it's literally been like even in 2017, people were like, "Why are you looking at Dogecoin? It's old tech." And then it put in this, and then people are like, "Oh yeah, Dogecoin, haha, I knew." And then it had these pumps in between, quite a bit of volatility. And then the moment it started dying down again, people were like, okay, yeah, you're looking at old tech. What are you doing with your time? And every time that happens, the market just proves people wrong. The worst part about this all is, like I said, I didn't make too much money on this. So that would have been the cherry on the, okay, I've been right and you've been wrong pile of things. Because like I said, I've been getting a lot of crap for covering these older altcoins, and then you see something like this where Dogecoin outperforms literally the entire market in a daily candle, and good vindication there. But it's I'm still salty about it because I mean, this is the first major Dogecoin pump where I haven't increased my net worth very, very significantly, let's say it that way.
Buck says, adds some good context. On Robinhood, you can, some of those of you only, you can trade BSV, BCH, BTC, Doge, Litecoin, ETH, and ETC. I mean, look, that if anything, that like narrows the list further when it comes to these altcoins.
Yeah.
And of course, right, there's the Robinhood restricts crypto trading due to extraordinary market conditions. So, I mean, the headlines today, it's just been a job in itself to follow, right? I mean, there's they're restoring GameStop trading with this after this emergency $1 billion kind of cash injection, essentially, which they say is a protective measure. But it's just the markets are absolutely mental right now. And my favorite, of course, is who can help me make Soldier Coin a real thing without getting any legal trouble with the SEC? Like real and legit. I think this could be big. I don't know. Contact me, thanks. I don't know. I'm not going to really say much else on that. And this to me was absolutely mental. Probably maybe the craziest of them all. Binance suspending withdrawals temporarily to address a large increase in requests from new unique users. I mean, it's insane. There's so much going on. At this stage, it's things can really change at a dime. Like if ETH breaks all-time high, I suddenly become pentable, and long only, and all this kind of cycle top whatever talk goes away. Bitcoin starts shitting the bed. You just have to adjust. I think you have to be nimble.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the reason why, for the people that haven't been around in 2017, the reason why Cred keeps repeating this is crazy that all these apps are at the front of the App Store is because literally that's exactly how 2017-18, the altcoin bubble actually burst. We had altcoins go up, and then we had a massive influx of new users on Binance, on Bittrex, I mean, even on Cryptopia back then. And you could literally back then sell your Binance account for between 0.5 and 1 Bitcoin.
Yep. People were so Binance had to cut off signups because they just couldn't keep up. And so you could go on like forums and eBay even, and 0.5 to 1 BTC, I think is correct, for just a Binance account. It's, I mean,
and even Cryptopia was 0.1 to 0.3, I think.
I'll sell someone my Cryptopia account now for 0.1, 0.3.
Which is funny because they got hacked, lost all their funds. And the insane part about this all is that people actually pay the Bitcoin for a Binance account to buy the literal top on all of these things.
What a great crypto experience.
That just adds insult to injury. But this is why, because we've gone through it before. This bubble is extraordinary. I mean, I call it a bubble. Maybe it's
the pin.
maybe just a paradigm shift, whatever. But this is a little bit special in how it's been going. We've been going really fast, really far, And this time it's not only crypto that is going, and I mean most of these altcoins still haven't gone. I mean Dogecoin is one where it's just gone in one day, but like most of these altcoins still haven't had their time in the limelight, and I'd be sad if they didn't get
like Ripple,
any time.
Litecoin, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just maybe this time is different. Honestly, there is a lot of difference between this time and last time, just based on the fact on the macro backdrop, right? The macro backdrop is everyone is a gambler now, and it's just something that we have to live with. If you go to Reddit, if you go to Twitter, if you go to Instagram, everyone is gambling. Yeah, so it's kind of like we are in a new paradigm of sorts. It's just a question of how long is that going to go for? I could see prices double, triple, whatever from here easily. But I don't think that's going to be sustained for a long, long time. Like, I wouldn't expect this to go on for 6 months, even in the traditional markets like it is now. Like, I think if this goes on for a month or two more, you're either going to get regulations come in because there is, I mean, let's be real, this kind of stuff is really crazy. If you're looking at GME, GameStop, you cannot make... Oh, this is on Bittrex. I didn't even know that they were trading on Bittrex now. What the fuck?
Does anyone?
Now, but if you're looking at this, right, we all know that GameStop is a pretty shitty stock, right? I mean, that's putting it nicely, right? I mean, maybe it's worth like whatever. It's really hard to judge the worth of any kind of asset, but this kind of rise is not ordinary, and neither is like there's bunch more. And yeah, you can kind of say this is the short squeeze, whatever, but still, like, even if it is a short squeeze, it's extraordinary, right? And the market conditions that allow this kind of stuff to happen are special, right? Because this wouldn't have happened in 2019, 2018, 17. The market wouldn't have been ready for it, and I don't think like you would have gotten this kind of reaction. So there's wild stuff going on. I don't know how long it's going to go on for and how high we can go while this is happening. I mean, I could just see markets, like I said, like just go absolutely mental. But I mean, I think it makes sense to kind of think about, okay, what am I going to do if this kind of starts retracing heavily or starts going back to where, I mean, in my opinion, where it belongs. And then you're going to have some crazy times in both real life and in the crypto markets. So it makes sense to kind of think about what you're going to do the moment it starts deflating. I'm not saying it's going to deflate from here. I'm just saying it makes sense to kind of think about your future plans, because one thing that I've learned over the years is that whenever I get thrown into a situation that I'm not comfortable with, I'm really good with that kind of situations, but even then, like, you make suboptimal kind of choices. And it's much easier to make good choices when you actually have at least thought about the possibilities of, even the traditional market's going absolutely nuts, right? What do you do if this 10x's? What are you going to do if it goes down by 50, 60, 70, 80%? It's just something that I think makes a lot of sense to think about, because when you've actually thought about it before, you're not going to feel like, okay, what is going on? Or maybe you will still feel like it, but at least you're going to have some sort of plan of how to react.
Yeah, you need contingencies, which is why, I mean, TA helps to some extent, right? To some very small extent. Like, if you want to get a sense of risk on and off, like looking at the ETH scenarios, etc. But yeah, it's certainly a weird time. And it's really easy to get caught off guard with stuff that wouldn't normally shake you. So, like, just like the Dogecoin example, right? If you're trading that on futures and you decide to take a punt, suddenly you realize that there's like 20%, 30% moving against you on like a small pullback or in a candle that's barely visible. You can just get liquidated like that, right? Your account can vanish. So dumb shit like that, and also stuff we didn't talk about much on the channel, but like literally taking money out for taxes and capital gains and keeping your crypto safe and securing your emails, not giving money to fucking strangers or phishing scams, like all these sorts of things are also just ways to lose your money, which maybe we should do a separate episode on, like all the stuff that we've learned in terms of non-trading related ways you can get your ass kicked. But it all kind of falls under the same umbrella that's worth, taking seriously, no matter what price, but especially at a time like this, I think.
Well said.
Cool. Any final thoughts, questions, remarks? That's kind of all I've got. I'll try to provide more clarity on Bitcoin on Monday, but if I don't have any, then don't expect me to make stuff up, frankly.
I think we've covered plenty. We've gone on like almost double the usual time. So.
Of course. Nice. All right. Well, thank you for spending your Friday evenings, afternoons, mornings with us. Make sure to like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe to the channel if you subscribe to the channel. Nothing else from me. I look forward to catching up on Monday. And Duck, thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for hanging out. See you guys next time.
The third party, Bybit, the show's sponsor. Thank you to them for supporting Technical Roundup. If you'd like to support the show, us, keep this ball rolling, keep the music playing before we run out of chairs in this weird market, make sure to visit their links in the description. That would be cool. That's all we've got, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.